All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our next session, Coaching and Mentoring Unpacked, A to Z tips from industry experts. This webcast has been pre-approved for one HRCI credit and one SHRM credit, so please be sure to attend the complete webcast in order to receive your credits. You will receive an email from hr.com within 2 business days that will include your certification information. So during the webcast, we have the chat open for engagement, and then as well, if you have questions for the presenters, we ask that you place those in the Q&A in your webinar controls. All right, without further ado, I think we're in for a treat here. So it's now my pleasure to turn it over to you, Michelle Prince, to get us started.
Fantastic. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Michelle Prince, and I'll be your moderator today, as Rhonda said. I am the founder and principal of Prince Consulting. I've been a leadership coach for over 15 years and an HR practitioner and leader for over 25 years. We're going to have the panelists introduce each of themselves and ask them to share a fun fact. And so I thought I'd share my own fun fact is I have a book coming out shortly, actually called Creating Your Encore Career. So it's designed to be coaching for us boomers who are thinking about their third act or next phase of what you might look like and from a work perspective after you're done working in corporate and not quite ready for retirement. So that's coming out soon, and that's me. We have a fantastic panel with us here today, and we're going to talk to all of you. Our discussion is around coaching and mentoring strategies that can enhance employee well-being, professional development, and all the efforts that you desire for your associates, your managers, and organizations. So we'll have the panelists introduce themselves. Helen, why don't you start us off?
Thank you so much, Michelle, and thanks to HR.com for hosting this and having me here. I am the founder of Life Works Well, an HR consulting boutique who helps scaling organizations create healthy, high performance and heart-centered cultures. I too have a long career, a little bit varied. I started out as an employment lawyer, HR lawyer, for a large financial institution up here in Canada. And eventually I just loved everything HR, so moved into an HR role with them. And also had another opportunity to work for a large global tech company, actually helping them build out their HR products and services in a completely different role. So I'm using all of that skill set to create, a new world, the future of work. So thanks again. Fun fact, I think in another life, I might have been a singer. Or wannabe singer. I just love music and singing. So everybody knows I just randomly sing all the time. And I may take some singing lessons in the next year. So something fun.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for being here. Shannon?
Yeah, good afternoon, I guess it is at this point. My name is Shannon Dager, and I am a business coach and consultant. I have a background as a senior professional in human resources and also as an entrepreneur. So I primarily focus on coaching and consulting small to medium-sized businesses with a sales and leverage focus. My fun fact would be that I do have a podcast called The Leverage Ladies, where I co-host with a very well-known author, and have a new season coming out with a very secret and celebrity co-host that's going to be new. So I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you. You've got all of us on pins and needles wondering who that celebrity co-host is going to be. And Robin, thanks for joining.
Hi, thank you. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm honored to be part of this panel. I'm excited to talk with you today. My name is Robin Barbicane. I am the Chief Talent Development and Inclusion Officer for Rackspace Technology, and I too have a long career in HR. I've been in HR the majority of my career, which is about 30 years now. Maybe a fun fact, it was called personnel when I started, which is embarrassing to even admit that out loud, but over the past 15 years in my career, I've really been specializing with organizations in transformation and helping them to shape the talent agenda to be able to accomplish the business goals and objectives. I primarily work with organizations in BFSI, healthcare, and technology that are experiencing either high growth or hyper growth. So that's where the transformation specialization comes into play. my real fun fact that I was going to share with all of you is that when COVID hit, I really started on kind of a health journey of getting back in shape and working out more regularly with a group of friends of mine. And one of my best friends here in the Philadelphia area signed us up for an event called Walk Across Delaware. So I can say that I've walked across the state of Delaware. It's not lost on me that it's the smallest probably state in the union, but we did walk 15 miles. So that's one of my more interesting, more recent fun facts.
Well, fantastic. Well, what a fun and diverse crowd we have today. So thank you everyone for those introductions. Just for the audience perspective, we're going to actually do a fun thing. So we're going to go from A to Z. We're going to talk about coaching and mentoring strategies from A to Z. We're going to start with Robin and A for accelerating careers, and talk a little bit about the exciting things you're doing.
So something that we're doing with accelerating careers, all of us in HR, we've been focusing for how many years on, attraction, retention, and development of talent. Maybe in the A category too. And being in technology, we've started to look at how we can embrace AI to help us with accelerating careers. So my CHRO and I have partnered together with our CTO, and we've started to look at interesting ways that we can bring AI into the mix in terms of looking at career planning, career development, creating curated learning plans for our individuals, because one of the problems that we know that we have to solve for is our workforce, just like, probably all of you as well, is very diverse. We have a multi-generational workforce. For us, we have a globally deployed hybrid workforce. So a vast range of what people are looking for in terms of accelerating their career, and in using AI to be able to look at things like job descriptions, skill sets, competency models, mapping that with current jobs that we have available. We're starting to use it to be able to create an approach that looks at what job are you in? What do you want to do in terms of development within your job? What additional jobs do you want to go into? And creating an opportunity to be able to have a launching point that gives you something specific to your interests, your needs, and then also give some recommendations on what you can do in terms of development. And of course, then including mentoring and coaching in it. So we have this very curated plan for our individuals.
So I love that it's like a tech and touch approach, and using AI, leveraging AI to help supplement the mentoring and coaching that might occur also on a human basis, right? We don't want to necessarily replace the humans. I love also you mentioned to us before that you're actually naming your AI. Do you want to say a word about that?
We're actually looking at AI from a really unique perspective for us and for all of us, right? So things changed a lot in March of 2023, right? When GPT really became available. So we started to approach our thinking differently. We went through an education for all of our entire workforce to, number one, bring ourselves up to speed on what AI is, what it isn't. And then we started to look at how do we embrace it and how do we bring it into the way that we work. So we've created the notion of looking at it like a coworker, so that we have additional team members on our team, which are the AI. We have 2 team members right now that we've been playing around with. One is called Rita and one is called Ice. Ice, I don't know, is a former rapper of some sort who switched into HR. Rita is the Rackspace intelligent technology assistant. I forgot what her name was. But she has a specific job, right? She does specific things. So when you start to look at AI that way, you can almost create job descriptions of sorts and look at what skills, what tasks are you going to delegate to this new coworker? And then how does that free you up to be able to do some of the more creative, innovative work when it looks, you look at coaching and mentoring. We don't really want to be stuck in building the mentoring plan, right? That's an administrative task that we could give to somebody like Rita or another AI that we build. And then it allows you to stay in the mentoring role where you're interacting with your mentee, or your coach and the coach relationship, so that you can really get deep into the relationship and build it out further. So that's the way that we've been looking at it now.
That's fascinating. And we might hear more about that as we go through the alphabet. And so speaking of the alphabet, we're going to talk about the letter B. Helen, how can our audience think about boosting confidence. How does coaching, mentoring, and maybe even the complement of technology help the participants, the associates, the managers, and the organization boost confidence?
Thank you so much. Great question. It's really interesting when you think about, from my perspective, that most everything starts with self-confidence and that whole belief set system. And I know that Shannon may touch on that whole mindset later as well. And so think about the ripple effect if everyone had this confidence and abilities, right? And so I'm surprised that building self-confidence in these skills isn't really a high priority in the strategic initiatives or the key competencies in a way. But I think about greater confidence, meaningful connection, and inspiring relationships. It's really going to have that positive impact on health of both of those participants as well as the organization. So when I think about it, it's going to shape, future leaders and more innovation, and it opens up diversity of thought. So I think that, we don't want those clones necessarily, or the yes people in our orgs, but we do want them to be able to be confident enough to speak up for opportunities. So that's from the mentee perspective, or be able to take on a project or a stretch assignment that they'd like. And so, again, some of those tasks we can probably delegate to AI, but that human connection piece where one-on-one conversations, especially mentor to mentee, that confidence building, the mentor themselves, their leadership role is coming to fruition, especially if they're an emerging or new leader. So I really think that, creating that trusting environment. And then the one other thing I'd say is that it can be also available to build confidence in those group mentoring or coaching, where you're learning the facilitation or you're enhancing your skills of, empathy, listening, all of those things. So they all intertwine. So I really think that it's really important to look at this. And I just wanted to mention one study out of UK. It was Moving After and Deloitte back in 2017, but they had about 6,000 participants with about 40 organizations. And 87% of mentors and mentees felt empowered by their mentoring and coaching relationships and have developed greater confidence. And I can share that out later, the link after the session. So those are my initial thoughts.
I'm so glad you brought the statistic in, because on our HR.com survey, the respondents were mixed in terms of, do you measure the impact of your coaching and mentoring programs? And it's interesting because boosting confidence, or asking the mentors and mentees whether or not the relationship, the effort, and the participation helped boost their confidence, and then secondarily help them either do their job better or give them more confidence to look for growth and development within the company, is absolutely a survey question that can be built into how you measure impact of your program. So from a strategy perspective, if you're the owner of the program or you're devising measures for the program, let's not make an assumption about that. Let's really measure it so that we have some data upon which we can move forward and build further. So thanks for that, Helen. Let's bring in Shannon. Shannon, we're going to move to the letter C. I feel like we're on Sesame Street a little bit, but so Shannon, we talked about how coaching and mentoring can capitalize on skills and strengths, and you and I are very results oriented as well. So talk a little bit about how you see the organization capitalizing on the skills and strengths.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that we all have unique gifts and abilities. And if we can, identify what those are, we have the ability to be exponentially more successful through that. We can all be successful if we grind and we dive into something, but we experience burnout. And so diving into something that is our unique gift and ability allows us to thrive naturally and in a way that gives us work-life balance. And so we do a lot of things from a coaching perspective to make sure that that happens. And that's some of that is like strengths analysis, but also feedback collection. When we're working with an organization to say, like, let's gather some feedback on your on your results. And we even use AI to then say, where are the holes in here? And how can those lead to the next steps on aligning and making sure that we're coaching to the right things so that we have sustainable pipeline, sustainable results and growth down the road.
And you and I both work with salespeople, sales growth leaders, VPs of sales, things like that, who really want to drive that productivity within their team. You know, and the days of writing out for managers, ask these questions, you know, from an HR perspective. That's another place that AI can be brought in. Not that we want to focus on AI, but if you don't know the right questions to ask or how to ask them, it's an amazing thing. You can type in and then ask, if I want my people to get better at, what are some questions to ask them? So managers can actually do that themselves if they want to, or HR can create that line of questioning or script to really help bolster their coaching on the job. Not just
it's super interesting. There's a whole new line of careers that's being developed around AI, and they're literally AI prompters. And so just by having some, like, we teach some small classes, and here's how to prompt AI to get the correct results, not just the canned results. So let's learn how to craft this so that you can really develop training that's custom to your role, your industry, and what you're looking for. It's fascinating, honestly.
Yeah, and super fast. It's
Super
really
fast.
incredible. So great. Well, D is for develop new skills. I kind of think that's a no-brainer. We all know that coaching and mentoring can help develop new skills. But so Helen, let's jump right to E, which is really about enhancing communication and interpersonal skills. And certainly in the multi-generational workforce, we've heard that those interpersonal skills and communication skills aren't necessarily as robust as they need to be. So Helen, what are your thoughts about that?
Oh, I love this question because I have been in this career journey for a long time, and it never, I don't know why it still surprises me that communication skills are so often one of the skills that need development. I have a colleague who is doing a doctorate, and her thesis is studying all of the MBA programs across Canada and even North America, and what is being offered in the curricula. And communication skills for the longest time was often not part. And I thought that doesn't make sense to me, because it's like the number one thing we need in our organizations. So I come at it from a couple of places. And I think that that's where, to me, the group mentoring and the group coaching, as well as the one-on-one, is really, really going to help elevate some of the leadership skills. And so when you think about communication, what I saw, and I was going to mention this earlier because there were two themes that came out of a lot of what we did with the HR Professional Association up in Ontario. There's about 25,000 members. We have a mentor program, and the two top things were boosting confidence and enhancing my communication skills for the mentees. And so really that's the presentation skills. And, you know, people if they make their way up, they might want to work on executive presence and all those other things, but it is often so overlooked on the individual basis. And so there's so many creative ways that you can enhance those skills, you know, whether it's allowing the mentee to present at one of the next meetings or run the meeting, having opportunities for even an internal Toastmaster type thing. So that's sort of on the individual level with the skills, but I also think from programmatic, you know, implementing these types of programs, coaching, sponsorship, and mentoring, don't overlook the communication strategy that goes along with it. It is so, in order for that success, it really is, it's like launching a product externally. There should be that excitement for it, and really coming up with creative ways, not that, you know, the usual, let's do the speed mentoring or something like that, or let's assign these coaches to everybody that's at a certain level. To me, I really believe everyone can benefit from mentoring. And it doesn't cost a lot other than time, unless you're huge and you need a technology program. But really it is such a beautiful way to create that connection and meaningful relationship and work on that one-on-one communication and all the things we already talked about: empathy, listening, compassion. So that's my little spiel on communication.
Fantastic. Thank you. And actually, letters F and G kind of really build right on what you were saying, because F allows the mentees and the coachees to focus on themselves. And sometimes people need permission to help themselves develop. They're waiting for someone to tell them it's okay to do it. So focusing on themselves is really a strategy, and really encouraging, as an organization, encouraging your people to focus on themselves. We used to say own your own career back when we were personnel, Robin. So but over the years it's changed, and some of the next generation are kind of waiting for permission, if you will, to focus on themselves a little bit. And G, giving back to others. That's where the mentors and the coaches come in. Is really, you've honed these skills, now share them and really help the next generation of workers. And then there's reverse mentoring, which we won't talk about at this moment, but all of that can really help enhance organizational culture, both the give and the receiving, and building that organizational culture of collaboration. Robin, what are your thoughts about helping enhancing the organizational culture through mentoring and coaching?
I think it's critical. I mean, culture at the end of the day, right, is the core foundation of really how organizations operate, right? It's kind of a living, breathing organism if you think about it, right? And what I think that we forget whenever we get to work is that we're in relationship with each other, right? So Helen touched on it with communication. She touched on it with relationship. If you're not investing in the relationship, it's going to start to fall apart. What we know is for any healthy relationship, you have to have two things foundationally, right? Trust and communication, and we need to continue to work on it. When you look at organizational culture, the way that you continue to look at it is you need to continue to revisit it, right? I know, as I said, I work with organizations in transformation. At Rackspace, what we're doing right now is we know, because of where we are on our transformation journey, the culture that got us to where we are now is not going to get us to where we need to go. So we're intentionally doing work where I just completed a global listening tour where we actually went out and we sat face to face with groups of, we call our employees rackers, groups of rackers, and we talked about all the different issues that were identified in the employee engagement survey. I have a really data-rich environment that I was able to step into, and I was able to study the data. I was able to identify kind of focus areas, right, and have a hypothesis of what I think we needed to work on. And then when I went out and we sat down and we talked it through. So now we're working on everybody taking a part of building the culture, co-creating the culture that's going to take us to where we need to go. And through having the listening sessions, what was good is now I know how the organization is thinking, feeling, wanting to evolve. So I even was saying to them, when I'm in rooms that maybe you don't have access to, I now can answer questions when they're posed to me, knowing confidently this is what the organization needs. So again, just like in your relationship, while I don't do this well, but you should have date nights and stuff like that, right? You need to connect. You need to be in relationship with each other. You need to be talking to each other to be able to bolster, and build that habit building within the organization to move forward.
Sure. And that actually plays beautifully into the letters I and J, actually, because increasing visibility within the company and jump-starting your networking efforts is something you, at Rackspace, you mentioned that you're globally diverse and hybrid environment, and many organizations have retained that environment post-COVID. So
Right.
it's even harder for people to get visibility and to network when you're feeling isolated in your own office. So that's a huge part of the organizational culture. And I do think there's a lot to be said for companies calling people back in certain days of the week or certain number of hours per month, just to make sure there's that visibility. Because I would hate, from a talent management perspective, for people to feel like out of sight, out of mind. That is one of the risks from a talent management perspective. And you mentioned keeping engagement levels strong in that listening tour. Is that So is that something that you've seen, Helen, maybe you've seen other organizations that have globally dispersed workforces do listening tours to hear what's going on with the organizational culture?
Oh, I think so for sure. You need to keep the connection, and I would say especially new. Well, obviously, on the first 90 days, newer leaders are often using listening tours and really engaging with a lot of people, also looking at engagement survey results. I hope that most of the surveys have a section on mentoring and coaching as part of their training and development, because I really think a lot of this, when you think about culture work, it's really what's the DNA of the organization. So how are you embedding what you would like to see in those behaviors? So I like to call it, either the coaching mindset if you're doing a coaching culture, or the mentor mindset, or the everyday mentor as part of a mentor culture. And I think that if you're not listening to your people, there's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
And it's the biggest difficulty, though, I find sometimes, Michelle and others, is that are people being honest?
Yeah.
And if they're not, then that there's deeper challenges. And so a lot of the work that I've done in the past has really been uncovering these things. Like I was managing the most complex employee relations issues and the things that just got escalated, and investigations. And so ideally you're out in front of it, and really, if it is a transformation like Robin has to engage in, is like if you're actually trying to change the culture,
Yeah.
if you're not
So
listening and really getting the answers, you're
Yeah.
going to have a challenge.
From a coaching and mentoring, thank you for that. Coaching and mentoring perspective, Shannon, learning from others, maximizing their impact, nourishing their desires to grow. What are your thoughts around how that also helps keep engagement levels strong?
Yeah, I mean, my experience is that as an organization grows, a lot of times we lose that touch that we have as leaders. We start an organization and we're really in touch with our people, and then we become more and more focused on the sales results. And that makes sense from a numbers perspective, but as you get more and more focused on the results, you get less and less focused on the people. And so, I think there's a huge role in coaching for us to help leaders be accountable for spending that time doing those town halls and doing those smaller, community meetings. Because here's the thing, if you don't know if they're being honest with you if you don't have the relationship in place. And so not having that you can say, well, if they're being honest with you, well, how do we know if they're being honest with us? If they don't feel safe in that relationship, we don't know if they're being honest. And so I think there's a huge role for us as coaches to help with that and that accountability piece, and remind, that those are important, and hold those people accountable for that.
I think that's a fantastic point. And it made me think about another use of technology, such as like engagement surveys that we almost all of us have, either an annual, semi-annual, pulse surveys these days. But if people don't feel comfortable being honest on those, and you have a low response rate, those are little indicators that you might need some of those smaller focus groups, or the listening tour that Robin talked about, that really helps drive that relationship. The O and P of coaching and mentoring alphabet soup is about obtaining new perspectives and preparing for future roles. I think this is like the crux of what coaching and mentoring is all about. But the Q is something that I love, which is quickening productivity. Really intentionally building coaching and mentoring into your onboarding process. For example, I do a lot of work with organizations who are trying to enhance their onboarding, both from a technology perspective, but also a peer mentor. And how do they devise that so that it makes sense, so that it's comfortable for everybody? How does it help accelerate the integration and productivity? So that's something I know is really important. And in addition to that, the mentor for that new hire shares knowledge and experience. So there's our S, Robin. Talk about sharing knowledge and experience from a coaching and mentoring perspective.
I mean, that's the most valuable component of it, right? You have somebody that you can go to for guidance, for advice, that in a safe space you can bounce your ideas off of. And what we know about in coaching, really anything in the learning space, right, is only 10% of your learning happens in the classroom, right? The large majority happens. I'm a hockey mom, so I always use hockey analogies, right? It's those game day decisions when you're on the ice and in a split second you have to make a decision. Same thing for leaders, right? We can have you read books, I can have you in class all day long, but until you're actually in that relationship again, right? You don't know how you're going to react. So sharing that knowledge, experimenting with it, testing it out, continuing to build that muscle is really, really important. And again, it's one of those journeys, right, that has no end. You should always be working on that. You should always be trying to learn more. You should always be trying to get better at that so that you're investing in the relationship. And what people really want from the coaching and mentoring relationship is that experience that you get in it, that connectivity of not only are we telling you as associates, as the workforce, what we think in those employee engagement surveys and stuff like that, but we're actually being heard. And you're actually taking time to invest in me, right? That's what people need to have. That's where you create that psychological safety. And we know research has shown us for many, many years, people don't leave organizations necessarily because of the organization. They leave or stay because of their leader. So those leadership relationships, those mentoring relationships, those coaching relationships are absolutely critical to engagement and being able to keep people with the organization and to retain your talent.
Absolutely. So for new hires, quickening productivity, but for associates who have been there a while, it might actually ramp up their enthusiasm for work when someone is willing to share their knowledge and expertise. And it's wonderful, maybe Shannon, you've seen this as well, when we build in being a mentor for people who are not managers. It gives those people who have been there a while, and maybe they just don't want to be managers or they haven't had an opportunity to be a manager yet, but they can be a mentor.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think most people want to contribute and give back to society. That's where we find fulfillment. I mean, the number of conversations I have with even, salespeople who say, I just want to give back. I want more meaning from my role. I don't want it to just be numbers based. Listen, I mean, a lot of our roles are numbers based. So this is a way that they can contribute to an organization and a culture and feel a part of something bigger and feel a part of helping somebody else achieve their dreams. It's an unbelievable opportunity to engage our people.
Well, and that leads beautifully into T for talking with people outside of our usual circles, because that's also when, especially if you're hybrid or remote, you're usually talking with the same people on the work. But how do you get to know what's going on outside of the usual circles that you're working with? How do you uncover new interests? How do you even find out about other parts of the business where you might want to take a look, and that can be very valuable input from mentors from across the organization. So V for value, valuing input from others, but also valuing yourself, as you said, really, making sure that you're owning that development. Our W is actually about working towards achieving greater life balance. And so something a little bit more non-related to work, but how do I create some greater balance when the company is expecting this and I've got these obligations at home? We didn't really talk about that, but Helen, I have a feeling you've got some perspective.
Oh, so it's so interesting because when I was at a formal corporate HR role leading programs, one of them was the work-life program. And it's been through iterations and change. So again, it's like the more things change, the more they stay the same. But obviously with hybrid, there's so much more opportunity to have the supports for helping employees manage their work and life. And to me, work is just part of life. And well-being is critical. That's why I named my company Life Works Well. And it's like life works well when you do. Otherwise it falls apart. Anyway, but I think the beauty of linking, and that's where I think traditional mentoring, where someone has walked that path before. So those programs where you can set up mentoring or coaching that align to what you're dealing with as an individual in your career and life. And so matching those people. So if you have it and linking it to your equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives, because someone has lived that experience. So having those supports, and it's not just about my technical skills, although that's really important too. And that's where I think mentor circles are amazing as well. And you talked about peer-to-peer. I mean, there's so many different ways. I think that that's the beauty of these relationships, is that they can be so flexible. And speaking of flexible, that's a topic for another panel, I think, because we could go on about that.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is really the health of your individuals is going to equate to the health of your organization.
Yeah.
And so
And
that's my thoughts. Yeah.
thank you for that. It's funny. It reminds me of a story. This was probably 15 years ago, but relevant today, where I was running talent management and the women's ERG. And I approached one of the leaders to say, would you please be on our panel to talk about work-life balance? And she's like, I don't have any, so I'm probably the worst person to talk about it. And actually not. You know, we shouldn't be afraid to share that we're all struggling with some level of challenge finding what I call that work-life harmony. It's not balance, but it's harmony, right? It all has to work together. And sometimes work plays louder and sometimes personal lives play louder, but you know, it has to be somewhat harmonious in order for us to feel good. And so when we had her on our panel, she talked about the challenges that she was having, and almost everyone in the audience was relieved because they needed to know they weren't the only ones struggling. So it's also mentoring in a way that helps people understand it's not just them, right? And the mentoring circles play a lot into that. Shannon, do you have some other thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's so funny, Michelle, because somebody actually asked me the exact same thing. And it was actually a husband asked me to speak to his wife, and somebody who I was coaching, and said she's really struggling with, you know, all the things she wants to accomplish. And can you kind of tell her how you got there? Because I started a business and had 3 kids, and we kind of, you know, took them with me everywhere I went. And I mean, honestly, my answer to him was, I think I got through it with some wine. Like that was like my initial, I was like, you want me to speak to, like, this is what I'm going to tell her, wine. And so, which was not really true when I sat to think about it, but I had never really thought about my actual approach to getting through and having work-life balance. I just made it through. But what I did do is I said, you know, what I can do is I can form a group of other female entrepreneurs that we all come together now once a quarter, and we have a huge event. And we have a speaker who, you know, comes and talks, and we just open up really vulnerably to each other as business leaders, and literally talk about everything. Sometimes things that you don't want anybody else to hear, but in that room, it's a safe space. And having that community is just absolutely crucial within our communities, within our organizations. And my thought is, if you don't have it, make it. Let's build it, because we need it. As human beings, we need it. And so I think we all need to be real that we struggle with work-life balance. We all do at some point. Even those of us who teach it, we struggle with it. And the way we can teach it is because we get through it from time to time, and then we get back in it. So being honest about that is really important.
That's right. I tell my kids and my husband and anyone who will listen that I strive for perfection, but I'm not perfect. And so, you know, things happen, and life balance or life harmony, you know, gets sometimes a knock on the door. But that happens to all of us. So
Anybody
Shannon,
who's growth oriented is going to be pushing through the boundaries of that, because if you are trying to achieve more and you're trying to build a bigger life,
yeah.
then you're going to constantly have to be pushing through that boundary, and it's a push-pull relationship.
And I was going to move into the X letter here, and Shannon, that's exactly what we were going to talk about, is solving for X. So those of you who are mathematically inclined, right? What is the equation that your X is, right? What is your challenge, and how does that either prevent you or help propel you moving forward? So when you coach or mentor to solve for X, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the hardest part is to try to say, okay, this is what I want to build. A lot of times we put limits on ourselves that we don't even realize are there. And when you think about it this way, you think, okay, I say this year I want to achieve X. 9 times out of 10, if you've written it down, I think there's a truth that if you've written it down and you've spoken it, you're 84% more likely to make it happen. And so how many times have you said this year, I want to achieve X, and you achieved it? Well, what if you had put another 0 behind that X? What if you had put 2 zeros behind that X? So are we limiting ourselves to say, I want to achieve something that I actually can, even though it feels big? Is it big enough to really get you where you want to be? So we try to do some reframing techniques, some awareness building, but really trying to push people into understanding what is our long-term vision. What is that? Like, what is that when we go to say, I've had a successful life? This is what my life is. What does that measure? What is the whole life measure? And now let's backtrack and let's go back through and say, what does that look like at 10 years, 20 years, 5 years, 3 years, 1 year? And what does that number look like versus saying this is a 1-year goal?
That's very relevant, especially for any entrepreneur in the audience here. I'm thinking about how to grow your business and have that bigger mindset, play bigger. There's a lot of coaching around that. Robin, from an internal perspective, what are you seeing as like the most common X, that we have to solve for internal to organizations?
I think, to be honest with you, and drawing off of what Shannon was talking about, right? It's the accountability component, right? So oftentimes people can identify what they want to do, where they want to get to, and then they get a little bit lost in that. So where mentoring and coaching can help so much is that accountability model of establishing your goals, writing them down. Completely agree with you, right? I live in the Philadelphia area, so I think it was even a Benjamin Franklin quote that taught us that, right? It's really looking at how do I create a group around me that are going to be peers and coaches and support in a strong way. Not that everybody's just your cheerleader and telling you, yes, everything you're doing is right. But when you get to that tough point, when you need to really persevere and you need to push through the difficult part of it, how do they help to hold you accountable in a really healthy way so that you can get through to the greater things that you want to achieve in your X when you're adding those zeros at the end?
Yeah. And in my book, I talk a little bit about establishing your own board of directors and the types of roles that might be. I know you talk a little bit about that too. So you're right, not having the right people around you can really limit you as well. But one of the limiting beliefs I heard as an HR professional for years is, why would that person want to spend time with me? Why would that person want to take the time to mentor with me? And that's a limiting belief. And organizational mentoring programs where you're matched and assigned really helps people remove that limiting belief, as opposed to if they had to informally go and find it themselves. So from a internal strategy perspective, making sure that we're consciously aware that there are people who would love to be mentees and coaches, but don't necessarily feel like they can go and ask someone who's especially a higher level leader if they would spend time with them. So we kind of remove that limitation from that. So
I would say, Michelle, too, I think that I find, especially in particular with women, we have a very hard time understanding what our long-term vision for our lives are. Like, we often are, and I think some of it's generational too, I want to be honest about that. I think that today's generation sees things a little bit differently, but we have a hard time seeing past a certain point in our life, and then we reach a point where we're like, what's next? And helping to identify that and helping somebody create a vision is where a coach really can come in. And you hear about this through life coaching so often, but helping you understand what you're really looking for and where you're really fulfilled. And the earlier you can get into that, even better. because I mean, you know, your results will just grow and magnify. But it is just one of those things. Creating a vision is so challenging as an individual. It's like writing your own resume. If you ever try to write your own resume, it's so hard. But even, I mean, I don't know, even I'd have a hard time writing my own resume, but I can write anybody else's in 5 minutes and it'll be beautiful. So let us help you write your resume. You know, let us help that vision and that creation. And it's so amazing when you see somebody come through that breakthrough and you've helped them craft and figure out what they really want to do in life.
Yeah, just to kind of add to that, like that's where that coach mentor comes into play, right? Because if you've laid out, this is my vision, these are my goals, here's where I think I want to be. What that coach does is also brings to your attention if they see you veering off the path, right? Asking you questions like, I'm seeing you go in this direction. Are we okay? Are we going in this direction now? Or did you want to stay here where you told me you want it to be? And sometimes that's the breakthroughs. Those are the aha moments like, oh yeah, I don't want to go that way. I want to stay here. Or no, things have changed. This is why I'm intentionally moving in this direction. And now we create a little bit of a different plan because life is not linear. Careers are not linear. They're kind of squiggly lines all over the place, right? But that's what that coach mentoring relationship does for you, is to ask questions, ask the tough questions, right? Put that mirror up and say, this is what you told me you wanted to do. Are we still going there?
And there's our why: yielding more positive results, more positive outcomes, more of what you said you wanted to achieve, and that accountability and shared accountability for helping get there, asking those tough questions. And even if it's okay to make that left turn or squiggly line, at least you've gotten the mentee or coachee to think about why, and does it make sense? As a coach and a mentor, that's such an important role for sure.
Can I just add one more thing? Because I know
Yeah,
you want to go
sure.
on, but it all goes back to one of the things I think that's critical is knowing your why. I mean, we apply that to so many things, but in this specific relationship as well. And one of the things we did at the HRPA that we introduced when I was the chapter chair was doing vision boards. And I know that's for some people woo-woo and everything else, but it really was just an amazing, fun way to bring people together, mentors, mentees, and start their year off every January and thinking about what is it they want to accomplish for that year. And they could do a life one too, and it just kind of made it concrete. And then they could, in their mentoring meetings, they could have fun and really say, okay, well, how's that going? So I just thought I'd add that quick because a little bit of levity.
Yeah. And so Nicole Isaac's in the audience, and she's chatted a few things to us, which really brings us to the letter Z. And she talked about a little bit about it's hard to figure out what it is you want to do. So we talked about solving for X and having more positive outcomes as a yield. But if you really don't know what you want to do, a mentor or a coach can really help you zero in on what is it that you want to do, what are some barriers, even if it's your own limiting beliefs, or organizationally, because as coaches, as external coaches, we see often that people feel like they can get another promotion outside the company even more easily than inside the company. Truth be told, that might be the case. So how do you zero in on what some of these barriers are? So thanks, Nicole, for bringing that in. Any of you want to talk about kind of zeroing in as we come to the close?
I could just comment on that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Shannon.
No. You're good. You're good, Robin. I was just going to say, like, I think a lot of times we get stuck in the, what do I want to do? And I think it's more, what do I want to accomplish? And so when though I work with a lot of sales leaders, when I say, where do you want to be at the end of your life? It's not a numbers game. It's not a numbers game. Sometimes the numbers have to be in alignment in order for you to achieve that. But the picture for me is sitting, looking at the ocean with my husband and my dogs nearby and my kids nearby me. It is not, how much money do I have in my bank account? Now I want to sit by the ocean. So there's a certain amount of numbers that have to be in my bank account, but I can sit in a house on the ocean, or I can sit in a condo near the ocean. Right. So it's what does that picture look like? And the reality is that I have natural abilities. And so I can use those to get from A to Z, but it doesn't mean that it's a perfect road and that we're all going to be doing exactly what we want to get there. It's about identifying that why and that end result, and then the path there. And sometimes it's perfect and sometimes it's not, but I stay on the journey, and coaching, and I have 3 coaches, help hold me accountable when I struggle to see that path. So I just want to say that there's, and I know Robin wanted to speak too, and I want to honor time. So there are other assessments and identification methods that coaches will help get very specific with, but I think it's really about saying like, hey, we don't all get to do what we want to do 100% of the time. But if we can get where we want to go, and we can do a lot of what we like to do along the way, our life is really successful.
And everyone's journey is unique. So you really have to spend time thinking about what that it is. Robin, you have something real quick? Otherwise, I'm going to go to our wrap up.
I would just add to that. I mean, you're exactly right, Shannon and Helen, right? The vision board, whatever it is, like reverse engineering, starting with the end in mind, is the right place to start, right? And then as you go through that process, I work a lot with actually even high school students and college students looking to figure out, what am I going to do with my career? Stay in curiosity, ask questions, right? Using the beach analogy, if you see somebody who has the same vision as you, and they have the house and they have the condo, talk with both of them. How did you get the house? How did you get the condo? Why did you choose the house? Why did you choose the hunt? And then figure out what makes sense for you. So ask questions through mentoring and coaching. Go find the people that are doing what you want to do and find out how they got there, right? And then figure out how that applies to your life.
Love
That's
that.
fantastic advice. Thank you. All right, so we just have a few more minutes as we wrap up. We started talking a lot about AI and technology. We kind of morphed into relationships and how important those human relationships are as a complement to the technology and AI. And then really got into it's really about you and figuring out, yourself. What is your journey? Where do you want to get to? And then enrolling and enlisting others to help you along the way. Now, from an organizational perspective, it's interesting, just as a wrap up, our HR.com survey on coaching and mentoring indicated that about 40% of the respondents said they had right now no plans for AI in the near future. That was like 4 or 5 months ago when they responded, and things changed so quickly. But just to be sure that those of you who are not thinking about how to incorporate AI into talent management or coaching or mentoring, to be sure you're not left behind, I'm inviting the panel to share some final thoughts on how either they are thinking about it or how others might be able to think about it. So let's start with Helen. What are your thoughts around that in the near future? Where is AI playing a role for you?
Yeah, I'll be really quick. In my personal viewpoint is that AI can't replace those human connections and the connection and those discussions and the dialogue and, crucial conversations. But it can certainly help with the operations, admin, the day-to-day FAQs that are common. There's so much. Like, if you haven't started to embrace it, I suggest you really should, because it can really help with elevating those organizational needs and productivity, and have fun. I've been enjoying it. I've been part of a mastermind, and I've been creating, if you check out my LinkedIn, I create even AI generated photos here and there, and just have some fun with it and test it out and get the supports to learn how it can really add value to the organization. Don't be afraid.
Nice. So Robin, how about your practical application of AI you talked about earlier? What else do you have in the near future?
Well, first of all, Helen is spot on, right? What we have in the near future is we have a couple different AI, as I mentioned, where we're looking at using AI within HR, creating these coworkers that are part of our team. They really are the resource, right? They're not humans. So that's so important. We even started by personifying them, or using the language saying we were personifying them, making them people, but we're talking about them more as coworkers now, because they're providing a function. And what we're starting to do, we started first with educating ourselves, understanding what it was, what it's not. how it's going to be part of our lives, looking at the ethical application at one point, and we found already just in 4 or 5 months, we've gone beyond just looking at the ethical application. We learned quickly we don't have to be threatened by it. It's not going to take over our lives, take over our jobs, because the human component of leading, managing, coaching people can never be replaced. So we're really looking at how we're embracing it, how we're adding the coworkers to our team to be able to offload some of the, you know, decision making, some of the oftentimes it's more of the administrative types of things that it's doing. But really what AI can do for you is it can go through and it can make a recommendation, it can decision, it can give you that jumping off point to start from so that the human can step in and continue to manage the relationship. So that's how we're leveraging it within our organization. We're even finding some of our clients are coming to us and saying, like, help build it for us because we don't have the capability of doing that. And so many companies, you know, are doing those types of things now. So look at how to embrace it, look at how to make it part of your life, and then look at how to build the AI and be able to start to take it from there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Fantastic. Shannon, so tell us, you know, what you're seeing as the near future of AI in your world.
Very similar. We're using it already on a daily basis and looking at pipeline development and using that to kind of match that and predict behavior, skill gap analysis, create training programs from that. So based off of conversion metrics and ratios, and writing personalized learning and development plans as well. And so it's already pretty, I was really surprised by the results of the survey. And I do think that it's time sensitive because I think that we see every single month the development of how it's changing our plans.
Well, and I think something that Robin said earlier is super, super important is that she and her chief HR officer are partnering with the CTO officer, right? So
Yes.
it's a partnership between IT and HR to bring these to fruition. A lot of the HR technologies are building some AI automation into their products and solutions already. So if you have audience, you know, any kind of HR technology that you're using already, be sure to ask your providers and your solution vendors and partners for what are their plans for AI. Before you know it, you might not have to do anything because the technology you're already using might end up having some AI that can help benefit your organization. So, and that is the time that we have. Thank you all so much for joining, and thank you so much to my panelists. Back to you, Rhonda.
All right, I'll echo that. Thank you very much to you, Dr. Prince, and to all the panelists. Excellent presentation, and to everyone for engaging and participating. We thank you very much. This concludes the session. If you'd like to view it again, it has been recorded just now. It will be archived shortly on hr.com. You can view it again at any time. You can also check out your hr.com account for your credit, and we will send an email with your HRCI and your SHRM credit information. Those credits should be in your account within 2 business days. And up next, we have Coaching Culture, the Secret Weapon for Business Success, presented by coaching.com. To join that next session, you would just go back to the webcast auditorium and click on the next session. We hope to see you there. And just before you do that, when I close the session, an exit survey is going to pop open on your computer. Just take a moment to fill that out. Your feedback is super important to myself and all of the people on the call today. So take great care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.